This is Empowered Human Academy. Welcome home.
It's just not freedom from the external. Like, oh, I don't have to listen to anybody kind of freedom.
Sure.
It's, oh, I don't have to listen to that voice inside my head kind of freedom.
This is about love. This is about light. This is about the idea that you have everything you will ever need.
And this life of yours, this is where you grow, you expand, and you remember who you really are.
I'm Abe.
I'm Isaac.
In Empowered Human Academy, we join with humans of all kinds to feel the inspiration that can only come with empowered living.
The stories you hear today are unique, but the energy you hear today belongs to you too. So, with hearts wide open, let's begin.
We are with our friend Catherine Gell. So as part of this conversation, I really just want to invite everyone to listen with open ears, open hearts, and get to know someone who we find inspirational and who we think you can learn a lot from. So Catherine, welcome. So can you tell a little bit about yourself and how you've come to who you are today? Love that.
About me, I am a business person and a mother and a friend and someone who is deeply concerned about the trajectory of, I could say the world, but that almost makes it too big. I am deeply concerned about the trajectory of the United States, our democracy, and its failing foundations. I used to care, I used to publicly care about issues. I had things, policies, problems that I wanted to talk about. And now, if we were to talk about that, although our focus is other for the moment today, I would not put my focus on a specific issue other than a system of democracy that, if it functioned well, would allow us, with all of our diversity and different ideas, and even on top of the enormous challenges, current and those that remain from history, we'd be able to get together and figure out a way forward. We could figure out a way forward, even though it's hard. So that's why I've left business. And I work full-time now in political innovation, which is to say, how can we change our US political system so that we could solve problems for real people that would make a real difference in how people in our neighborhoods, across the country are living. And that's what I do. And it's fun. And it's rewarding. And in the midst of this time that is so challenging and distressing. And, it's good to have something that I look forward to, not in the short term, but in the, achievable term that I think could make a difference.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I'm smiling so broadly as you're saying this because I'm also somebody who thinks in, and not to project, but I think in systems, and I light up whenever I see an opportunity to retune something so that its natural health and brilliance can emerge, and when everyone starts to bloom, that's the goal, right? For me, and it sounds like in a similar way for you. Has that kind of thing always been important to you? How does Catherine connect with that kind of idea? Is it natural for you? Have you always known that you care about this sort of thing? How did you establish a scope for it?
Yeah. So there's no question that thinking in systems has always been natural, even if those weren't the words that I put on it a long time ago. I mean, we just all have an orientation, right? And there's a logic that it's almost like something in my mind is always mapping onto what's going on. It's like a computer back there constantly revising the structure that I see playing out. But when the light bulb went on for me, I went into business sort of unexpectedly. I was planning a not-for-profit career in education and education transformation, all these things. Long story short, I ended up in business and I realized I don't know anything about business. And I found a book by a man named Peter Senge. I'm pretty sure he was at MIT, and it was called The Fifth Discipline. And it was about systems thinking and all these maps about, one thing leading to another thing. And I had never seen anything like that before. I actually lived in Chicago at the time, and I bought it at, I think it was a huge Barnes and Noble right on Michigan Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was amazing. Now, what's interesting is he made it really complicated. And it turns out that to make a difference in the world, I mean, his work is still super valuable, but we don't necessarily need to get that complicated for us.
Totally.
You know, so there's like the academic deep dive of everything. And then there's just understanding, you know, cause and effect. And usually cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, you know, like that. Mm-hmm. And so if I were to say my view on systems thinking now, I would say the most important thing for me is to figure out enough to understand what is causing and affecting, but then to figure out if there's a dysfunctional cause and effect going on, mm-hmm. where do we get in the circle? You know, there's always a chicken and the egg. Mm-hmm. There's always a villain in the circle. You can find one or more.
Sure.
But if it's not a villain that whose behavior we could alter, mm-hmm. I sort of let it exist in the system and look for the weak wall in, look for the Trojan horse way to get in to what's wrong and take my eye off the stuff that's wrong over which we have no power. Mm-hmm. And I think that is probably a difference of me now than me 15 years ago, where I was so offended by anything that was wrong in a system that it was hard to tamp down my outrage
and be productive.
To focus on the things where I had agency and power.
Really?
And in the end, of course, if you focus where you have agency and power and you disrupt a dysfunctional system, you eventually, you know, sort of take power out of those things. But, you know, I just liked to be right. I like to be right. And of course, if there is a villain and, you know, you can make an argument, it can sound really good and you can say why what they're doing is so wrong and everything, but it just makes no difference. Right? Mm-hmm. Makes no difference.
Was there a point in time where you stopped caring about being right so much, or maybe you still do in your own way, or how's the relationship to that changed?
Well, let's see. If you ask certain people in my life, I think they might say that I still care a great deal. You know, that doesn't go away. I mean, I care about being right. And of course, there's a good side to that, as there is a good and bad side to sort of any intense personality trait that we have.
Really?
But where I became so self-aware of it, mm-hmm. as in I understood that was driving me versus that I knew people told me that. Because of course, when people told me that when I was in my 20s, I would think, well, yeah, because I am right. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay. Yes, I get that you tell me I always want to be right. Well, because I am. And when I went to a course, I took a course called the Landmark Forum in my early 30s. And at the end of that course in the 3 days, I remember one of the things that I stood up and said, I specifically remember standing up and saying, you know, one of the things I've really taken away here is how exhausting it must have been to be my friend or my family member. Because I was so attached to being right, even when it didn't matter. Let's even assume I was right about something. I wanted to be right even when I didn't need to. Mm-hmm. Like, what difference would it make if you tell someone 10 ways to Sunday how wrong they are? You know, like, so, and also I am wrong more than I thought then, but it was also less about, am I right or am I wrong? And more about just how helpful is it to be so concerned about being right versus the other person. Totally. Like, because I wasn't just right, it was, and you were wrong. Right. So, but here, what I said at that time is I said, you know, it must have been exhausting to be my friend or my family member. And I said, and I realized I could hang in there with that way of being. And I'm pretty, you know, I feel pretty good. I'll be right for a long time. Sure. And I will be very right and very alone.
Yep. Makes sense.
And if we think about it, it's not just I'll be alone, so I'll be lonely. Mm-hmm. If one is alone, one is making no difference in the world. So it wasn't like, oh, I don't want to be right so I can have friends. That's good too. But also, you don't make anything happen by yourself.
Absolutely.
You being right all the time doesn't make anybody want to work with you or, want to have fun with. I mean, it's just it was so crystal clear after those 3 days, and it's definitely changed my life, as have so many things, candidly. Something changed my life last year. Something changed my life about 2 weeks ago, like just an insight. And it's like, if you told me a specific insight like 10 years ago, it probably had the same potential impact on me, but you can only absorb so many things at once.
Yeah.
Totally. And you need to be at a certain point in your journey in order to ingest or make something resonate with you.
Digest.
Actually. Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. So along your journey, and you said it was a while ago in your 30s that you had that course. How has that changed your perspective on yourself and how you lead and how you think about the work that you're doing now?
So the major difference from, me pre-Landmark Forum and post-Landmark Forum is my willingness to take risk. So remember I said I was into being right. So I talked about it as being right versus other people, but there was another thing. There was being right and not failing. So I had success in many ways, but the secret was I was only doing things that I knew I would win before I started. So I knew it was going to be hard. I'm not saying I only did easy things, but I pretty much knew that the risk was calculated and I would win. And so, and again, not win compared to people, be successful. So once I started realizing, I need to start doing things where it's not clear that I will be able to be successful, then I would be living more on the edge of what's possible. I would be creating. And then, of course, if you can do that and you succeed or you fail, you're actually somewhat more capable after either success or failure, and then you can try the next thing. So by finally starting to take risk, and risks as defined by what made me comfortable or uncomfortable, like worried about how something will be perceived or how, worried. I mean, I think actually failing is usually failing in the eyes of someone else in some ways, I think most of us don't mind so much failing. Like we don't really mind tripping and falling in our living room.
Because you get back up.
Kind of mind falling on the street.
That's a good way to put that.
In fact, I think people would rather trip and fall in their living room and hurt sort of sprain their ankle and be on crutches than trip and fall in public and hurt nothing.
I think that metaphor has a lot of really interesting applications. Yes, I think you're correct. So it sounds like your priorities have then and maybe since then have been shifting from like a model of living that I'm using a bunch of words here and tell me when they stop applying to your actual situation. You shifted from a model of living where you were doing a thing that you felt like you needed to do, like you needed to be right, you needed to not fail publicly, you needed to succeed at all these things. And you've become more, I don't want to say productive because you were very productive with those things, but the focus of your productivity has shifted into changing the world around you. How would you describe, like at a very abstract level, what do you actually care about? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? What's your actual priority underneath?
I would say first of all, I care about making a difference in the world, but I cared then. But now what I'm willing to risk to make the difference and the freedom that I have.
Okay.
In the way I respond to what happens.
Okay.
I was very stimulus response.
Yeah.
Sure.
And things triggered me and I went there.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And now, let me back up. So have you guys ever seen Stephen Covey's 7 Habits?
Of successful people?
Okay. It was really famous when I was, right out of college.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. And he shows that animals, have a stimulus and have a response. And so do humans, but there's a difference. there's a space for humans between stimulus and response where we can reflect and then we can choose. Do we want to respond this way? And I thought that was fantastic. And I learned that in my 20s.
Okay.
And it was really helpful. But it turned out there was a limit, which is I got really good at pausing. And in the space, I would say, yes, I should do X. Like, I'll give you an example. There was, I don't want to do too much details just in case someone I know watches this, but there was someone in my life who I didn't care for. And every time something would come up, I would say, oh, yes, but that's not helpful. And you need to let other people be there. I would do a zillion things about why I should not be upset. And then at the end of all of the reflection, I would say, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to hate her anyway. Because I wanted to. You know, like I knew I shouldn't. I knew it wasn't hell. I knew all those things. And I wanted to. I wanted to give in to what that was. I didn't have the freedom to actually take advantage of the space between stimulus and response. And after I took the Landmark 4, I mean, it's not instant, but it was, I mean, in some cases, it was pretty instant, but then it's something you practice over time. And then I just got a lot better. Again, not perfect, but a lot better at really maximizing my freedom to choose. Like not being a master of, oh, this, you know, this is how I've responded since I was a child. And I just do that. And of course, we'll be practicing that for the rest of our lives.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's what's changed. So I have a freedom to be, I'm willing to fail. I now do things worth losing, which is different than doing things I'll know I'll win.
Yeah.
I do things worth losing. And I also try to only do things worth losing, you know, as in don't rail about things I know I can't make a difference about.
Sure.
So it's this freedom. I was not free to be or to contribute or to freedom.
Yeah. What does freedom feel like to you?
Feels bigger, feels more creative. It feels more connected because if you're free, then there's an opportunity for other people to contribute to you, you know, because you're not already set. There's no space for contribution with a person who's already decided everything, right? So it feels better.
Well, and you've been talking about freedom, and it's interesting because in the media, we see a lot of, you know, freedom, you know, I have the freedom to not wear a mask, and it's become really politicized. And the freedom that you're talking about is in your mind and your sense of being. And I think those two kind of narratives, the one that you've been sharing with us and the narrative that we see in the media, are quite different. And I think, like, in my opinion, and I mean, you can kind of share your opinions on this too, but one is more open and constructive, and another sometimes, not all the time, but what I've noticed is sometimes can be more destructive and isolated. Like I don't care about my neighbor, stuff like that.
Oh, sorry, Isaac, go ahead.
One more idea, and then as we continue to talk about this, there's also an interesting distinction there too, because the freedoms that you're talking about as discussed nationally right now, those are like granted or elected or voted for freedoms, as opposed to a freedom that you choose for yourself.
Sure.
And that's a difference between, or a freedom that you come into as a conscious person.
Yep.
That there's a nuance there as well. But I interrupted you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, you know, so I would say, so freedom does not mean a free for all. Like I feel free, but I have tons of constraints and principles and values and intentions and responsibilities that I must meet in that freedom. So freedom is almost freedom from the internal limitations. It's not freedom from responsibility. It's just not freedom from the external. Like, oh, I don't have to listen to anybody kind of freedom.
Sure.
It's, oh, I don't have to listen to that voice inside my head kind of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, and also, we don't want total freedom.
Mm.
There's not possibility actually in that. There's a fabulous book, Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Love.
I hope you get his once a week newsletter.
I do.
Oh my gosh, how can you come up with that many insights every week in those short little, I can come up with insights, but they take me 20 minutes, whereas he's got a sentence. Okay, so he says, constraints liberate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we need guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
because we can't just have every choice imaginable available to us, every choice of behavior, every choice of response. And we have short lives.
Mm.
And if people think they have a better idea for how to live in community with other people in a shared geographic space,
Sure.
and they think somehow they should have freedom to create a whole new vision of how humans are together. Like, that's not the freedom I'm talking about. I'm talking about the freedom to actualize and the freedom to be and the freedom to let others be.
Mm-hmm. And to be the optimal, healthiest version of yourself. Kind of what James kind of focuses on is how to make these habits and consistently perform them in order to have a fulfilling and optimal. The word optimal is coming to my mind because this group that I'm forming, I want people to operate in their most truest self, and it's so individual, right? Your individual optimization is so different than mine. It's so different than Isaac. And how do we understand that? How do we give ourselves space to explore that? Because we're so inundated with so much all the time that I feel like it's been difficult in my past to be like, okay, I'm looking everywhere. What should I do? What should I do? Oh, how am I ever going to feel like myself? I need to please everyone, and I need to please myself. Like, all at the same time, it's just like so overwhelming. So that's interesting that we've been talking about this.
This segues nicely, I think, into something that I've been wanting to ask you about. So yeah, creativity or freedom works well with a certain set of constraints, but it's important for me, and maybe generally for the constraints, to be something that are actually, how do I say this, that align with who you are, like the problems that you choose, right? Like we can evolve our life into something where the constraints that we have are things that we want to work with. And one of the things that I immediately was inspired by about you is that from what I perceived, you had structured your life and your patterns and many of the things that I could see visibly anyway, in such a way that you were freed to work on the things that you cared about. The constraints, again, all my own perception, and maybe I'm misperceiving, the things that I saw, the constraints that I saw were things that you had chosen so that you could exercise your freedom in a way that felt best to you. Is that fair? Is that unfair?
Yeah. I mean, it's very much a becoming aware of our mortality in a limited time awareness, saying, okay, I've only got so much time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just endless choice.
Sure.
So I need to choose wisely, and therefore there are some things I'm going to say, oh, I don't do that, and I don't pretend that I can just make everything happen, because I can't. So so I set up structures. I get help in some things and then do other things, where I sort of feel that's my best area.
Sure.
So I try to work with people who are really good at things I'm not really good at, and just not try to, in some ways, do everything. And I think one of the things I'm interested in adding to our conversation is maybe something that's even like a couple levels of granularity down,
Mm-hmm.
because we're all resonating with this sort of big talk, right, about freedom. Yep. But what is it, or constraints? If I could, I'll just say a couple totally doable things for anybody who was listening to this.
Absolutely.
So here's a constraint, and I probably told you guys about this already, but this is a constraint that has really made a huge difference for me. Here's my phone, and I have been wasting enormous amounts of time on media. And even if I'm reading good stuff, I'm not necessarily playing games, but like, oh, I'm reading this fantastic article or this book or even this academic, whatever, or I'm watching TED Talks, like I'm learning, etc. still, there's only so much time to learn instead of do.
Do. Yes.
And I might learn more, but if I'm pretending to be playing with my child while I'm sort of looking over here, I'm not present, all that. Okay, so there's only so much willpower. I get addicted to my phone and addicted to news and reading. So I gave my daughter, my daughter's 14, Alexandra, she put a security password on my phone, and then, so I can't get in there. So and it's meant for controlling your child's access to things.
Totally.
Wonderful.
So I don't have Safari on my phone. I don't have email on my phone. I don't have the App Store. I can delete apps, but I cannot add them without my daughter freeing up my phone. Because what I would do is I would take off Safari, but then I'd be like, I really need to see the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal. I'm going to download the Wall Street Journal's app, and then I'll see that. And basically, I had to put a lot of constraints around myself so I don't need to use my willpower to keep myself off my phone.
Sure.
And then now what I'm doing is leaving my computer in my office at night so that I can't then go to that. And let me tell you, I don't miss it, but if it's there, I will get that addiction back within like 10 minutes.
Totally.
If I happen to have brought the computer up, I'll stay up till 1 a.m. looking at stuff. So if I want to, you talk about, the health and everything. If I want to be healthy, those are the kind of constraints I need because I have to save my willpower for other things. So I invite people to really look around their lives and say, what things could I make really structurally difficult for me?
Yep. Absolutely. So segueing into the work that you're doing now, can you share a little bit about the work you're doing now, the book you just published, and then also what your day-to-day looks like and how you stay centered within yourself with all the interviews you do, with a lot of the different press, everything you're doing right now? How do you continue to stay Catherine throughout the whole process in such a crazy time, especially right now?
Yeah. Okay, so I published my book. Thank you for asking about it. Thank you for reading it. Thank you for liking it, by the way. It's called The Politics of History. And it's, again, all about political change. And I do hope anybody who is listening, who's concerned about the trajectory, actually buys this book and shares it with people because it has a really compelling analysis, lots of really fascinating stories in it about what's really going on, and it's not really what we think. But most importantly, it has solutions that we can achieve, which is the real, the best part of the whole thing. And so my full-time work is to try to drive forward this nonpartisan political change so that there's a connection between solving our problems and getting reelected, where there's currently not that. You're better off not solving problems if you want to get reelected, which is a crazy design for any political system. So we need to change that. I love doing that work. But as far as how I manage my day, again, going to James Clear, constraints and habits and structures. So I'll show you, this is my Panda Planner. And the part of the Panda Planner that has turned out, I've been using this for about 1.5 years now, to make the most difference for me, is not the calendar part, but it's just this top of my day. So we're all living in Wisconsin now. Isn't that great? We all live in Wisconsin. And so I start my day and I'll have a coffee, and then I look at here and I do something called 2 Chairs, which is another book. And so I sit in my chair, and my prayer life is talking to God, who's in the other chair. And part of how that dialogue works in the morning is I'm talking about real stuff, So I have this Panda Planner asks you to put down 3 things you're grateful for. Sometimes it's things or situations. It's mostly people for me. Then 3 things you're excited about. And then I've added a piece, which is 3 people I'm praying for, which tends to be about 2/3 people who I would like to have support in their challenges, and maybe 1/3 people I'm sort of praying, almost a prayer of congratulations or appreciation or something, although that's sort of in grateful. And prayer, again, it's not a rote prayer. Sometimes when I'm doing the praying for support, I'm not really saying, God, please cure this. I'm saying, and now I am sending this energy towards this person. So those set of 3 things, and the grateful and excited I've been doing for the, year and a half. The praying for part is newer as making it part of the actual structure. And so I do that, and then I read a certain poem every day, which is this. And it's from Walt Whitman, and it's just amazing. I got to send this to you guys. You'll really like this. And then I read this poem, and then I have my conversation with God, and then I write down all the things that I want to do that day. And what's also interesting is while I'm having these conversations or even thinking about what I'm grateful for, what keeps coming into my head all the time is things I have to do, like even in the middle of that conversation. So I just keep writing them down, and then I come back to the conversation. And I write them down and come back to the conversation. Because what used to happen if I tried to pray or reflect without also having this is I kept getting distracted into thinking about the things I needed to do. So now I allow both to exist by having a place to write down the thing I need to do and then go back to thinking on this. And they say that, right? If you spend time thinking about what you're grateful for, it supposedly makes you much more happy. And it does. So this is my structure. Oh, and then it asks you to put down like a quote for the day. In fact, I bet I could find in here places where I was grateful for you guys. I'll find one and I'll send it to you where you appeared on my, what I'm grateful for.
Thank you.
So
I have 2 more questions. Do you have any?
I have so many directions that we could go in. So go ahead with your questions and I'll interject.
Yeah, and I just want to respect your time. So quickly, I'm fascinated with people who do important work and how their humanity shows up in that work. So for instance, when you have, when you're working with Michael Porter, someone who's really, world renowned in his craft, or you are interviewing with CNN or whatever you're doing, when you're in front of people or institutions or whatever that are either a lot of people or really high importance in leadership or whatever, how do you show up as yourself? And what thoughts go through your head when you're talking about your work? I'm asking this question because a lot of people might have performance anxiety or feel like they have to show up in a non-authentic way. And you know what you're doing and you know what you're passionate about. How do you stay grounded in that when you are in front of people that you might be intimidated by, or there's a large stake at hand or something like that?
Yeah, for me, it's more, how do I allow myself to continue to be worried about the fact that it's high stakes, or that I care if this meeting goes well, and I care what these people think about me, and I care what the audience reaction is, and I care if I say something stupid. I totally care.
Yeah.
And then kind of doing it anyway.
Yep.
Which is, now I'm doing all these interviews.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you wanted to cut something out of one of my interviews and take it out of context, that you could make me look bad. I mean, I think could do that to any person who's been interviewed on a tape anywhere.
Sure.
And also sometimes I'm sure I do say things that I didn't really mean it to be that way or whatever. And so how I do that is I just do it anyway. I don't, meaning my ability to do it comes from all the other things we previously talked about, like this freedom to recover from being embarrassed, this freedom to, and this ability now to do things worth losing. I mean, that's the whole point. And so after something's really embarrassing or something, I'm just like, okay, well, that's good, because that means I had an audience that that was listening, that was big enough or important enough or significant enough for me to be embarrassed in front of.
Totally.
I mean, if I wanted to look, I love my daughter's class, for example, but if I wanted to speak to them all of the time, I probably wouldn't have a lot of fear of being embarrassed in front of her class. And again, they're amazing people, but if I am going to be recorded on something that's going to be watched by tens of thousands of people on YouTube, well, I'm a little nervous that I'll record something odd, but what a great opportunity to have that.
Yeah. So you show up, you just do it. That's great.
You just do it. And then you take, what comes, but don't wait for it to feel like you're ready. Because all those people my strong view is all those people that look like they believe they're ready have their own insecurity about it, or the way they've dealt with their insecurity is by developing perhaps an over inflated sense of self so that they don't have to feel the insecurity. Whereas if they were honest to themselves, even they should feel insecurity, so everybody's got their thing. And then you don't end up worrying as much about their things. That doesn't mean the voice in your head doesn't tell you about their things.
Totally.
Okay. So the voice, that's, I think, the better way to put it. The voice in the head does not go away. Like, oh, how could you have said that thing?
Sure.
And then you go, oh yeah, thanks for letting me know. And you move on. So the voice is there. You just don't listen to it nearly as much.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I know that a lot of people, and including myself sometimes, like, oh yeah, we all have those voices. And I mean, this is a project that came out of nowhere, but it's something that I'm excited about. And I think that can help a lot of people. So I'm just doing it, and we don't have a beautiful setup, and that's fine. We're showing up, and that's beautiful.
So cool. Yeah. It's just so, it's so fantastic when I see you guys, so young, and you're just fully living. It's amazing. Now, let us say for a moment, because I know we share this belief, we have already a lot of freedom when we come to this. It is a luxury for us to talk about, freedom from the voice in our heads, because we are not worried about our jobs right now, for example, or our fears for our family members out in the world. So, so I just want to acknowledge that for a moment, because I know we feel the same way. I mean, we're lucky to have this freedom, to have the problems with the voice in our heads sometimes feel like the biggest problem we have.
Accurate, yeah.
Because it's a luxury. And that's part of the point too. That's why we have to make the most of it.
Totally. Because it's such a gift and privilege to have.
And therefore, complete responsibility.
Absolutely. I think my question is going to end off the interview, but if you have a question.
It's something that's delighted me about what I've hearing, and I'll absolutely claim this as projection, because something that I've been working on a bunch over the last several months has been recognizing behaviors or attributes of myself that for a long time I've hated and I've tried to change, and I've tried to tamp down or ignore or carve out or things like that. And I've learned in the past couple of months that in some cases, like sometimes there are things that I can unlearn and that's real, and sometimes there are things that I can design around instead. Like knowing something about myself, whether or not it's my favorite attribute, like doesn't mean that I need to carve it out of my life. I can adjust my life so that knowing what I know about the ship that I'm captaining, I can steer in a way that respects the vessel and the environment. And I'm hearing that in you with something as small as your phone usage. And by the way, the reversal with your daughter, like giving her the keys, that's delightful. I love that so much. But between that,
she can't complain quite as much when I have hers, right?
That makes me sorry. No, that's wonderful. Between that and like recognizing that the voice in your head may never go away, and I'm going to do the work anyway, and I'm going to make choices, knowing that this part of me may never change, and that is not going to prevent me from doing the thing that I care to do. And that's I called this I was projecting originally, not to take ownership of this, but to say that that's something that is relatively new to me, and it seems very important. That's what I have to say about that.
I think it is. Oh, what fun.
So fun.
What fun to talk to you guys.
What, after all your career experience, personal experience, what do you know to be true?
That life is really short. In a profoundly sad way. And yet, that in and of itself being good, because if we didn't have all the people we didn't like losing or weren't afraid to leave the people we love, then wouldn't matter so much that life is short. If there wasn't so much work to be done and contribution to make and problems to fix, life is short. And so this poem that I said I read every morning, it gets at that, and it gets at how it is to exist in the middle of of human existence, which is short, and of human troubles, which always exist and seem overwhelming, and human frailty, meaning we and everybody else is so imperfect. And so you got all of that, and somehow, well, I'll just read you the last of this. What good amid these, O me, O life? Answer, that you are here, that life exists, an identity, that the powerful play goes on, and that you may contribute a verse. And that's what I know.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable and showing up. We really appreciate your time, and that was really, really beautiful. Friends who are watching this, go check out, can you go get the book real quick? Check out the politics industry and follow our friend Catherine's work. It's amazing.
It's important.
It's important, and we love you, friend, and thank you.
This podcast is the work of Lightward, our company, named for that toward the light direction which informs every single thing that we do, including money, which means, like everything else, the way we earn revenue is not based on industry norms. It's based on what feels deeply right and aligned by passing through the door that feels like it has more behind it, not less. And the way we keep this podcast going is all Lightward. It's pay what feels good. It's an exchange of value between you and us. We're keeping conventional podcast advertising totally out of this. And here's how Pay What Feels Good works. We give you this episode because it feels good to do so. And you consider, honestly, what number of dollars this episode is genuinely worth to you. I do not care if that's $3, $1,000, or literally $0 and a heart emoji, as long as that trade genuinely makes your day better. And the energy there is the entire point. That is what we're building our business on. No advertisers, no selling your attention, just you and us, trading value in a way that builds us both up. So whatever the number, when you're done listening, head to empoweredhumanacademy.com and hit the Pay What Feels Good button. We use this policy across all of our company's work, and I'm really excited to bring it here to the world of podcasts. This is us voting for the world we want to see. Thank you for being here.